Today we're here with Dan Marshell of the Lexington Historical Museums, and we're going to talk about the shot heard around the world. It was the beginning of our strive for independence here in this country. And my first question is, take us back to April 19th, 1775. What was the town like?
Well, the town of Lexington was a rural community, almost all farmers. There are a few taverns here, and of course there are businesses that are going to be supporting that farm economy. So you're going to have blacksmiths, you're going to have wheelwrights, those types of things to be able to support that community. But it is a rural community at the time. Not close to water, so you're relying on carting mostly to bring goods to and from market and such.
Okay. There was obviously as the British call us, rebel intent here, and give us some of that history of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge amount of tension that's building over time, and it really kind of ramps up as the British announce the Tea Act, which is going to really significantly impact the merchants, the colonial merchants, in trading tea. Because you're putting in all of these different provisions that are going to basically cut out the colonial middleman in that process. So tea was the kind of the culmination of this. Now, as this tension builds before the Tea Party, before the Boston Tea Party, Lexington has its own tea burning in December of 1773, a few days before the Boston Tea Party. And it shows the kind of revolutionary spirit that is starting here in Lexington. We know that Reverend Jonas Clark is very much a supporter of the Patriot cause. He is preaching from the pulpit for the support of this. So you have all this tension building, and after the Boston Tea Party, of course, Governor Gage, the British royal governor and military commander, closes the port of Boston and closes the harbor. So there's even more tension building. In December of 1773, we see Lexington's selectmen actually voting to provide bayonets to a third of the Lexington militia because those tensions are building. They're hoping that there's not going to be outright war, but the local militias are preparing for that as best they can. So you definitely have that tension building, and British forces are being sent out at other times to other towns to look for arms and ammunition that's being stockpiled by the American colonists. So you have all of this happening, and it kind of culminates at the Battle of Lexington.
And you had spoke that they came up the Bay Road, the British came up the Bay Road, and the photo that's behind you, it talks about the tavern here and the warehouse across the street, our meeting house. How that was here, and it blocked the view of the green, you said, as they were coming up, so they had to split.
Yes.
And the militia were there, 80 men waiting for them, and there's always been that myth of who fired the first shot, and what can you tell me about that?
Yeah, and that's the thing is, even after 250 years, we have hundreds of accounts of the Battle of Lexington, from American militiamen, Lexington militiamen who fought in the battle, residents of the town who watched it, British soldiers who fought in the battle as well. And we still don't know definitively who fired first. Most of the British soldiers say that the Americans fired first. Most of the Lexington militia and the town of Lexington men say that the British fired first. So you have, so we're not really sure. What we do know, though, is that the British soldiers were ordered by Gage not to harass the countryside or damage property as they went to Concord to seize arms and ammunition. And that seems to be holding until after blood is shed. And then you see the British forces as they're retreating, damaging property and such. But here at Lexington, we know the British troops are coming around that meeting house. They are seeing the Lexington militia The officers are yelling out to the Lexington militia that, "Damn you rebels, disperse, lay down your arms and disperse." Captain Parker, who is the commander of the Lexington militia, does in his own sworn statement say that he ordered his men to retreat off of the green. And according to him, the British line charged them and fired at them, killing 8 of his men. But blood is shed quickly, and then the British troops move into the rest of their column, and they continue on to Concord, which is their mission.
This moment, that moment in time, how did that galvanize the colonies together to, a year later, the Declaration of Independence?
Yeah, I mean, I think it almost immediately galvanizes Massachusetts colony and many of the New England colonies. It does not automatically galvanize the rest of the 13 colonies. It's a long way between April of 1775 and July of 1776, where you have the American militias, after they are fighting at Lexington and Concord and basically fighting the British forces all the way back, they siege Boston. They surround Boston so the British troops can't march out again. And by that point, there is kind of open warfare, open rebellion. The Continental Congress does appoint George Washington as a general of the army, but they're still hoping for peace. At least many of them are still hoping for peace. So it takes a while to kind of convince all of the colonies,
especially the southern colonies. They were like, let Massachusetts,
especially the southern colonies. Virginia is the largest, most populous, and wealthiest of the American colonies, and it takes them a good long time to. But once the House of Burgess in Virginia votes to declare or to seek independency from England, that is the kind of the next catalyst that starts to move the southern colonies towards agreeing on the Declaration of Independence.
The one thing that's always stood out is the people that fought here were regular people. They were barkeepers, they were farmers, they were, ordinary people. How do you think that legacy lives on today?
Well, I think it lives on in that the idea that the everyday person can express their beliefs and express their feelings on how government should work, and the British and the patriot cause begins peacefully, peaceful protesting. Not buying finished product from England to kind of force the merchants in England to lose money, to have Parliament change because merchants in England have representation in Parliament, while the American colonists don't. So they're trying to utilize allies in England to bring about a change. So over time, that evolves into bloodshed and war, but that idea that standing up for the rights, and the American colonists, many would have said that we are citizens of the British Empire and we should have the same rights as British citizens living in England as well. So we should be able to represent ourselves, we should be able to do these things. And many of the colonies offered that at various times to say, well, we'll raise the taxes you want, just let us do it our way. And we'll give you the money, but we don't want to be taxed from abroad, and that was part of it as well. But it is that legacy, and I think that the Lexington militia and these militias here, they are everyday ordinary people. They're not professional soldiers, but many of them had military experience because they followed the call from the British Empire to defend the Western during the French and Indian War, right? So all of that, so you have these men who are kind of a combination, right? They have some military experience, they're mustering every day, but they're not professional army.
Right. So, every man that fought there was a hero that day. Who is the one person that just stood out that, I don't know, maybe gave them that extra charge that day?
No, I mean, it's hard to really to make that kind of determination. I mean, for me, Captain Parker stands out partly because he is, as a commander, he is, he's doing what he feels is best for the protection of his men. They're not professional soldiers, and to engage and to start a war was not his intention by any means. But we also know that Captain Parker, at the time of the battle, actually is dying from tuberculosis, and he dies, I believe, in September of 1775. So he was not a healthy man when he took up the call to come and do his duty that day. But you also have men like Prince Estabrook, who was an enslaved man. He was enslaved by the Estabrook family. And he fought on the green that day, was wounded at the Battle of Lexington, and then fights through the American Revolution as a slave, and receives his freedom after the war. So what would motivate him? Because you have that dichotomy, right? You have this idea of we're talking about freedom, but many people in the colonies are holding slaves. But this man fought. Whether he fought on his own, wanted to be there, or whether he was told by his master to be there for Lexington, we're not sure. Right. But he does join the Continental Army and fight in the war. So that idea that his decision, in some way, whatever power he had to make some sort of decision, would have been a difficult one for him to make, just like every other man that came.
It's pretty much my statement at the beginning. They're all heroes. They were all something. Dan, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm
This
so
was
glad that,
wonderful.
You could come and visit, and we could talk a little bit.
I love it. I could take you love history just as much as I do.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
visiting. So.